I didn't believe in house spirits. Not the German kind, not the kind that climbed into fairy tales, not the kind that lived in attics, inside walls, or under old wooden floorboards. I moved into my new apartment precisely because it felt ordinary, normal, predictable. But on my first night, I realized the apartment wasn't empty. It started with noises, not loud, not violent, not even scary, just deliberate. Tap, 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 like someone knocking from inside the walls. I stood in the hallway, listening, waiting for the pipes to settle or the fridge to hum. But the sound wasn't mechanical. It had rhythm. It had intention. Still, I brushed it off. New place, old building, thin walls. I made dinner, unpacked a few boxes, then went to bed with the familiar comfort of denial wrapped around me like a blanket. But the next morning changed everything, because the things I had misplaced the night before, my keys, my earbuds, even my wallet, were neatly arranged on the kitchen counter. Organized, centered, as if placed there by someone who cared more about my belongings than I did. I stood there staring at the perfectly aligned items, and for the first time since moving in, the apartment felt occupied, but not hostile, almost protective. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'd done it half asleep. Maybe I was more exhausted from the move than I realized. But later that night, something else happened, something I couldn't explain away. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I heard the deadbolt turning, once, twice. Slow, careful, like someone locking the door for me. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, listening for footsteps, for movement, for anything human. Nothing, just silence. The next morning, I opened the door to grab a package and found the key. It sat alone on the doormat, small enough to fit on my palm, heavy enough to feel important. An antique design, intricate patterns, tiny runes carved into the bow, the kind of craftsmanship you don't see anymore. Attached to it was a folded note, written in impossibly small handwriting. 2 sentences. Keep it safe, and I will keep you safe. My skin prickled, not because the words were threatening, because they weren't. They felt like a promise, a pact, a request. But as I turned the key over in my hand, I saw there was writing on the back of the note, too, a single warning. Do not lose it, ever. For the rest of the day, nothing moved, no tapping, no strange noises, no shifting shadows. It was as if the apartment held its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I set the key on my desk, but every few minutes, my eyes drifted back to it. It felt wrong to ignore it, wrong to pretend it wasn't meant for me. Later, as evening settled, I caught something in my peripheral vision. A flicker, a tiny darting shadow near the baseboard in the living room. I turned my head quickly, but nothing was there. Still, I felt watched, not stalked, not hunted, observed, like a house cat sizing up its new owner. That night, the tapping returned. Tap, 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 tap. But this time, it wasn't coming from inside the walls. It was under the bed. I froze, heart thundering, gripping my phone like it was a weapon. But then the tapping stopped, replaced by a tiny, cheerful jingle, the sound of keys. Not metal scraping, not my own keys sliding somewhere. It was the crisp, unmistakable sound of a key ring being jostled, playfully, like someone small was carrying it. Then a whisper, not words, not a voice, just a presence, brushed across the back of my neck. I sat up straight, breath frozen, waiting for something, anything to move. Nothing did, but when I woke the next morning, the key I'd left on the desk was no longer there. It was neatly placed on my pillow, like a gift, like a reminder, like a claim. And for the first time, I remembered an old German folk tale my grandmother used to tell, the one I brushed off as superstition. A story about a tiny guardian with a belt of enchanted keys. A spirit who protects the home from harm. As long as you respect it. As long as you obey the pact. As long as you never lose the key it gives you. Because if you do, the Petermännchen doesn't leave quietly. It doesn't simply disappear. It takes something with it, and sometimes, and according to the oldest versions of the legend, it takes the homeowner. I looked at the key on my pillow and felt a strange, heavy truth settle in my chest. Whatever lived in my apartment had chosen me, and it wanted its pact honored. The key never left my bedside after that night, not because I kept it there, but because it kept returning there on its own. If I placed it on the kitchen counter, it would be on the couch the next morning. If I set it on the dining table, it would end up on my pillow again. Once, I hid it in a shoebox in the closet just to test a theory. By the next sunrise, the box was open, and the key was waiting neatly on the nightstand, as if the invisible guardian had shaken its head at me like a disappointed parent. The message was clear. Don't hide what belongs to us. But us was the part that frightened me. I was alone in the apartment, and yet I never felt alone. It happened 5 days after the key appeared. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, when I noticed the bathroom door move, not swing open, not slam shut. Just a tiny movement, barely a few centimeters, as if someone small had pressed their weight against it while passing by. Then came a soft jingle, not loud, not chaotic, rhythmic, a belt of small, delicate keys, being adjusted by someone 3 feet tall. I froze, toothpaste still foaming in my mouth, staring at the door frame. And then I saw it, a shadow, low to the ground, round at the top, pointed at the edges, like the silhouette of a hat with a brim, a tricorn shape, exactly like the old folk tales. My grandmother's warning whispered through my memory. If you see the hat, child, the spirit sees you too. The shadow paused, as if listening, as if debating whether to step into view. My heart hammered so loud I thought it might scare the thing away, or anger it, but just as quickly as it appeared, the shadow snapped away, like a flame extinguished by a breath. The bathroom fell silent again. Only one thing moved. The key on the counter vibrated slightly, as though greeting its true owner. In the days that followed, the apartment changed, not visually, but energetically. I would come home to find lights turned off that I knew I'd left on, windows locked, shoes aligned, important documents laid out neatly on the coffee table. One night, I forgot to blow out a candle before bed. I woke up at 3:11 a.m. to the smell of extinguished wick and the faintest echo of jingling keys moving away from the living room. Another night. The building's fire alarm blared after a neighbor burned something in their oven. People panicked, evacuated into the hallway. But my door, the only one, was locked from the inside. I hadn't locked it. Something had done it for me. It was protecting me. Yet each act of kindness came wrapped in something almost territorial. A drawer I left open would be slammed hard enough to rattle. A misplaced object I forgot to thank would be hidden for hours. If I ignored the key long enough, the tapping under the floor would grow irritated. Tap, 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 tap. Aggressive, impatient, like a child demanding attention, but with the power of something far older. One afternoon, returning from work, I found a piece of paper on my kitchen counter. My handwriting, my pen, but not my words. We are pleased. Keep obeying. There was no signature, only a crude drawing of a figure wearing a triangular hat. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't threatening, but it was intimate. Too intimate. The Petermännchen wasn't just watching my home. It was watching me, copying me, mimicking me, learning how I moved, wrote, behaved, and for the first time, I sensed a boundary I hadn't realized existed. I had accepted the key, and in doing so, I had accepted the spirit. The pact wasn't verbal. It didn't need to be. The key was the vow. I called my grandmother that night. Her voice, thin from age, cracked when I mentioned the Petermännchen. "Child," she whispered, "tell me you didn't keep its key." Silence. I had kept it. I had slept beside it. My grandmother sighed like she was preparing for grief. "Listen to me carefully. They are guardians, yes, but only as long as they feel needed. If the house feels safe without them, they make sure it becomes unsafe again." I felt a cold shiver climb my spine. Guardianship wasn't unconditional, she continued. They protect out of pride, not love. If you disrespect them, they punish. If you depend on them too much, they claim ownership. And if you try to banish them, her voice faltered. "What happens?" I asked. "They don't leave you alone. They leave you less." I didn't ask what less meant. My body already knew the answer. That night, as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I felt the edge of my blanket tug slightly, not violently, just enough to wake me. The room was dark, quiet, and then I heard it. From somewhere under the bed, a tiny voice, high-pitched, childlike. "Good, you kept the key," the jingling sounded again. Closer this time, like something crawling toward the top of the mattress. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. The voice added, barely above a whisper, "We protect what's ours." I felt something small and unseen pat the mattress, a gesture that might have been affection or ownership. I laid awake until dawn, holding the key in my palm, feeling its weight like a collar, a reminder that I was no longer alone, no longer simply a homeowner. I was part of a pact older than the building, older than the city. And as the sun rose, I caught a glimpse of my bedroom door, slightly ajar, even though I remembered shutting it tight. On the wood, 3 faint scratches, too low to be human height, too deliberate to be accidental. The Petermännchen had made its first mark, its claim, and whether I wanted to or not, I had accepted it. If the key was the beginning, the rules were the revelation. I didn't learn them all at once. They didn't arrive in a neat list. They showed themselves the way storms roll in, quiet at first, then unmistakable, then impossible to outrun. The first rule revealed itself on a Tuesday. I had forgotten to thank the Petermännchen for whatever it had done the night before. I wasn't even sure what it did anymore. Lights straightened, doors locked, things organized. Still, I woke to a loud crash. Every cabinet door in the kitchen was open. Every drawer was pulled out. The salt container lay on its side, pouring a white line across the counter like a drawn boundary. At the far end of the room, under the table, came the unmistakable jingle of keys. Not angry, not threatening, just disapproving. A sound like a tiny creature shaking its head. A whisper, too soft to be a voice, brushed against the inside of my skull. Show gratitude. The rule wasn't spoken aloud, but it was clear. I whispered shakily, "Thank you." And just like that, the air softened, the tension loosened. A breeze swept across the counters, and the cabinet doors shut one by one with gentle taps. The Petermännchen was pleased, and I realized then, this was a relationship, not equal, not balanced, but a relationship nonetheless. The second rule came 3 days later. It was raining outside, windows rattling. I sat on the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly, when I heard scratching, Not from the walls this time, but from the ceiling. A frantic sound, like something pacing. Then a thump, and then a voice. Faint but urgent. Do not invite others. My phone buzzed. A friend texted asking to come over. I looked toward the ceiling, felt the weight of unseen eyes staring down. I wasn't planning to, I said softly to the empty room. The scratching stopped abruptly. A small, satisfied clink of keys drifted through the air, and the message was carved clearly. The Petermännchen didn't want visitors. My home was its home. And it didn't like sharing space. I canceled the plan. And for hours after, I felt the guardian pacing overhead like a watchful animal circling its territory. As days became weeks, I started noticing patterns in its behavior. If I left the house anxious or upset, I would come home to find a cup of tea made, the kettle still steaming. If I stayed up late working, the lights would flicker gently, encouraging me to rest. If I sighed in frustration, pens I lost would appear next to my laptop. Bills would be neatly stacked. Laundry I hadn't touched would be folded. It knew when I was stressed. It responded to my emotions. It protected me. But protection has a price. Whenever I ignored its attempts to help, things went missing. A remote, a charger, a shirt. Gone until I apologized. Even if I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for, one morning, I found a message written in condensation on the bathroom mirror. Respect the home. Respect the keeper. Keeper, not guardian. Keeper suggests ownership, possession, control. I wiped the mirror, but the message reappeared later that evening. Identical handwriting, identical shape. The spirit was repeating the lesson. The contract wasn't just about protection. It was about obedience. My grandmother had mentioned offerings, a tradition in the folklore. Milk, bread, shiny coins, little gifts to keep the house spirit content. I decided to try it. One night, I placed a small saucer of milk near the baseboard where the shadow first appeared. I added a sugar cube and the key, not giving it away, just letting it rest near the food. Symbolically, I whispered into the quiet, "This is for you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights flickered. A warm pressure filled the air, like someone exhaling with satisfaction. When I woke the next morning, the milk was gone. Not spilled, not evaporated. Gone. The sugar cube had been split neatly in two, and the key was placed carefully on my chest, resting above my heart, a gentle but unmistakable sign. It accepted the offering. It accepted me. The relationship was deepening, and so was its claim. The third rule showed itself violently. I had spent the day cleaning, vacuuming, dusting, organizing. At one point, I moved the nightstand, the place where the key often appeared, to sweep behind it. Just a few inches. No big deal. But that night, something woke me. A sharp tug on my blanket. Then a cold weight pressing into the mattress beside my leg. A voice rose from the darkness. Tiny, breathless, but unmistakably angry. Do not disturb our space. The blanket tightened around me, pinning me down, not hurting me, but restraining me like a stern parent scolding a child. I whispered, trembling, "I didn't know. I'm sorry." The weight lifted, the room warmed, the keys jingled, slow, approving. And then something unseen patted my knee. Gentle, affectionate, possessive. That was when I finally understood. The Petermännchen wasn't living in my home. I was living in its home. Every room, every drawer, every shadowed corner, they weren't mine to rearrange. The contract was simple. Respect the spirit, obey the spirit, honor the spirit. And in return, it would protect me. But the contract had never stated protection from what, or who, or why. Only that the key must never be lost. Only that I must never violate the pact. And as I lay awake, hearing the small footsteps scuttle across the floorboards, I realized a truth I should have considered sooner. A guardian doesn't need to be benevolent. It only needs to be loyal. And loyalty can be the most dangerous thing in the world, especially when it belongs to something you can't see. Folklore books describe Petermännchen as mischievous, territorial, ancient, but always bound to simple tools: keys, locks, corridors, candlelight. That was centuries ago. I assumed, naively, that a house spirit wouldn't understand the modern world. That was my first mistake. Because spirits that have survived hundreds of years do so by adapting. And in a world full of devices, screens, passwords, and digital locks, the Petermännchen didn't just adapt, it evolved. It started subtly. My phone would unlock on its own, not with facial recognition, not with fingerprints. Before I even touched it, the screen would light up. Face ID bypassed, as if someone tiny and unseen had already opened it for me. Notifications would clear themselves. Emails would be sorted. My calendar reorganized. I chalked it up to syncing errors. But one night, as I placed my phone face down on the table, I heard the faintest jingle, then saw the screen glow. On its own, it typed a note in my drafts app. "We help. We learn." The words appeared one by one, like small fingers tapping the screen with invisible precision. My blood ran cold. The Petermännchen had figured out touchscreens. Next came the Wi-Fi. Whenever I watched horror content late at night, my connection would stutter, buffering, freezing, looping. But if I clicked on home improvement videos, cooking tutorials, or anything related to safety, perfect signal. Then one night, as I tried to research how to remove spirits from a home, my entire modem shut off. Dead. I heard tiny footsteps race across the floorboards above my head. A door slammed. Somewhere inside the house, though I lived alone. When the Wi-Fi came back a minute later, my search history was wiped. Every query, every keyword, and my laptop wallpaper had changed to a picture of an old iron key. Not mine, but one that looked somehow expectant. A message appeared in the corner of the screen, typed by no one. "Do not ask how to end us." I closed the laptop slowly, heart thudding. The spirit wasn't just watching. It was monitoring, intervening, correcting. The worst moment happened with my apartment security camera. I'd installed it before all this began. A tiny black eyepiece mounted in the hallway corner, pointed at my front door. Just peace of mind one evening. I opened the security app and froze. There, on the live feed, the camera was shaking slightly. Not wildly, but as if something very small were tapping it, testing it. Then the feed glitched, lines tearing across the screen. A shadow darted past, small, fast, hat-shaped. The camera tried to refocus, failed. Then the lens tilted on its own, pointing down at the floor, where the key lay, exactly centered in the frame. My phone buzzed as the app generated a notification. Motion detected, followed by another. Face detected. My breath hitched. A face, but the image on the screen showed nothing remotely human. Just a distortion, a cluster of pixels forming an almost childlike outline. Wide eyes, a slanted hat, and something like a grin. The image lingered for one frame, then another. Then the feed went black. When it came back 10 seconds later, the camera showed the hallway as calm as ever. Empty. Still. But the key that had been on the floor, it now lay on my pillow, waiting, watching. As weeks passed, the Petermännchen began to behave like someone arranging a life they intended to keep. My phone synced reminders I never set. Drink water. Go to bed earlier. Stay home today. My smart thermostat adjusted itself to my optimal sleeping temperature. I never programmed that. My digital shopping list added supplies I hadn't chosen. Flour, tea, candles, thread. Small bells, tools of the old world, merged with the new. It wasn't haunting me. It was managing me. One morning, I opened my bank app and nearly dropped my phone. A new budget category had appeared. For the home. No one could have added that but me. Except I didn't. The final straw came when I checked my email. A message sat unread in my inbox, dressed from my own account. Subject, a reminder to you. Body, do not fear the guardian. Fear losing it. Homes are fragile things without us. People are too. I slammed the laptop shut, but even from behind the closed screen, I heard the keys, jingling lightly, impatiently, as if asking, "Why are you resisting? We are only helping." One evening, a coworker texted saying she was nearby and wanted to drop off something I'd forgotten. Before I could reply, the spirit acted. The deadbolt snapped shut. The chain slid across the door. The peephole darkened, as if something was standing behind it. I tried to unlock the door. The mechanism refused to budge. My coworker knocked. Her voice came through the door, muffled. "Hey, are you home? Everything okay?" Behind me, I heard the unmistakable whisper of a tiny voice. No visitors. The lights flickered. The deadbolt vibrated, as if something very small was holding it closed, determined, territorial, possessive. I swallowed hard. "Please," I whispered, "let me open it." The spirit's response was immediate. "No." A full minute passed before the deadbolt finally clicked open. When I stepped outside to meet her, I felt a pressure, like eyes glaring from the cracks of the doorway, furious that I had insisted. My coworker handed me the item she brought. Her eyes drifted over my shoulder. "Who's inside?" she asked. I felt ice crawl up my spine. "No one," I said softly. Her face darkened with confusion. "I thought I saw something move." I forced a laugh. "I have mice." She didn't believe me. I didn't believe me. When I closed the door behind me, a cold gust swept the hallway, and behind the wood, something whispered, "This home is ours, not mine, ours." As if the spirit believed my life, my space, my choices belonged to it. I used to think the Petermännchen protected me. Now I understand. It was preparing me. For what, I still didn't know, but the shift was slow, deliberate, and unmistakable, like a spider weaving a web thread by thread, until one day you look around and realize you can't move without touching silk. The first true sign came when I tried to leave the apartment overnight. I'd packed a small bag, told myself I needed a break. Fresh air, some distance from the tapping, the whispers, the rearranged objects. But as my hand reached the deadbolt, I heard the jingle. Not playful, not warning, angry. The lock snapped back into place. I tried again, slowly, gently. The bolt twisted shut before I even touched it. Behind me, something small scurried beneath the floorboards, darting from one end of the apartment to the other, like an animal pacing its cage. Only the cage was mine. I whispered into the dark. "I just want to go out for one night." A pause, a long one. Then the peephole darkened, as if a small face pressed against it from the inside. A tiny voice murmured, "Not alone." My throat tightened. "I'm just going to the store." No, the spirit wasn't requesting. It was denying. It believed it had the right, and that's when I understood. Protection had turned into possession, care into control, affection into fixation. The unseen guardian wasn't guarding the home, it was guarding me. The next morning, I woke to find something strange beside my bed. Patterns, dozens of them, scraped into the plaster with tiny, precise strokes, thin as claw marks, but deliberate like writing. Circles, lines, symbols. At first I thought they were random, until I noticed where they pointed. Every symbol angled toward the same object, the key on my nightstand. I touched one of the marks, just lightly, and goosebumps rippled across my arms. I whispered, "What does it mean?" A soft jingle answered from under the bed, but no explanation came. I didn't need one. The patterns weren't a message for me. They were a reminder to the spirit, a ritual, a reinforcement, a reaffirmation of the pact. The key is the heart of the contract. The home belongs to the keeper, and the keeper chooses the resident. Everything changed the day I searched for a new apartment. I wasn't even trying to leave the Petermännchen. I simply looked at listings online, cheap studios, suburban rentals, balconies with sunlight, hopeful fantasies. Halfway through browsing, the screen flickered. My laptop turned off. Not crashed, turned off. When it restarted, all my tabs had been replaced with a single message typed out in a blank document. Stay. My hands trembled. I closed the laptop. My phone buzzed seconds later. A notification. Files deleted. My heart dropped. The Petermännchen had wiped the screenshots of apartments I'd saved. It knew what I wanted. It understood my intentions. And it disapproved. Hard. 2 nights later, my coworker Emily wanted to stop by. She'd been worried since I'd been avoiding everyone. I didn't want her here. Not because I disliked her, but because I feared what the spirit might do. But she insisted. 10 minutes, she said, just to check on you. Reluctantly, I opened the door. She stepped inside, smiling politely until the air changed. A cold draft slithered through the hallway. The lights dimmed. A cabinet door creaked open by itself. Emily frowned. "Did you leave a window?" She didn't finish. A picture frame launched off the wall and smashed beside her feet. She screamed and jumped back. I froze. The jingling of keys echoed from the living room, aggressive, rattling, like a warning growl in metal form. Emily grabbed my arm. "What the hell was that?" I forced a shaky smile. "Old building." But I could see it in her eyes. She knew I was lying. As she left, the door slammed behind her without my touch. A whisper brushed my ear from the inside. No others. No guests. No friends. No connections. The spirit wasn't protecting my home. It was isolating me. The final straw came a week later. I woke in the middle of the night to the feeling of someone sitting on the edge of my bed. Not heavy, small, light. Keys jingled softly, tenderly. A hand, tiny, unseen, brushed my arm. Then a whisper. "You are ours." Singular, plural. I didn't know which was worse. I swallowed hard. "What are you?" I whispered. The blankets tightened around me. The whisper came again, this time clearer. "Keeper." My voice trembled. "What does the key do?" A pause, then a chilling reply. "It binds." My stomach dropped. "What happens if I lose it?" The temperature in the room plummeted. The whisper turned sharp. "You do not lose it." Not an answer. A command. A rule. A threat. In that moment, under the weight of its invisible presence, I finally understood the truth. I had mistaken protection for kindness, but kindness was never the point. The Petermännchen guards the home, only because it believes the home, and everything in it belongs to them, including me, and the price of refusing? Unspoken, unimaginable, but carved clearly into the scratches on my wall. You do not break the pact. You do not leave the guardian. You do not lose the key. I didn't decide to break the pact. It pushed me there. No one plans to challenge a spirit. No one wakes up hoping to defy a guardian that has lived through centuries and outsmarted every generation it has haunted. But I reached a point where the apartment no longer felt like a home. It felt like a cage, and I was no longer the owner. I was the kept. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, watched, corrected, guided, controlled. I needed space, autonomy, freedom, and freedom, I knew, required one thing. I had to get rid of the key. Before facing the spirit, I tried again, foolishly, to simply walk out the front door. A normal person's instinct, a human instinct. The deadbolt resisted. Of course it did, but this time, I forced it. The metal scraped against its housing, inch by inch. My fingers ached from the pressure. Sweat dripped down my forehead. Behind me, keys jingled rapidly, not playful, not warning. Panicked. "Please," I muttered, "just let me leave." The lights flickered wildly, bursting, humming, surging. Then the entire apartment went still, silent, too silent. The peephole darkened as something pressed its eye to the other side. A whisper seeped through the crack between the door and the frame. "Do not go." I pushed harder. The deadbolt snapped the rest of the way. The door cracked open by 2 inches, and cold air rushed in from the hallway. But then, something unseen slammed the door shut with such force, the frame shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Keys dropped from the air like metal rain, and the whisper grew furious. Not without the key. I turned to the only thing I had left, information. Not ghost hunting websites, not paranormal videos. Folklore, old German texts, digitized manuscripts, even forgotten blog posts from scholars who spent too much time in the Black Forest. It took me days, but I finally found it. A description buried in an obscure 19th century folklore compendium. The Petermännchen is not summoned. It is invited by the keeper of the key. As long as the key remains, the pact endures. Another note further down. If the key is destroyed, the spirit will search until it is found. If the key is lost, the keeper will be taken in its place. My throat dried. There was only one safe solution. I had to return the key. Not lose it, not break it. Return it where it belonged. But where? The same text held the answer. The place of first offering becomes the spirit's anchor. The place where I first found the key. I knew exactly where it was. It had been months since I'd gone up there. The attic above my apartment, small, dusty, filled with untouched things from tenants long gone, where I found the key tucked inside a wooden box with a single note. For the next keeper. The attic smelled of cedar and dust, faintly sweet, faintly rotten. I stepped inside, holding the key in my fist. The door creaked shut behind me on its own. I didn't look back. Instead, I approached the box, still sitting where I'd left it, still waiting. As I knelt, the air changed. It felt tighter, heavier. The tiny footsteps began, slow at first, scuttling, approaching. I opened the box. My hands shook as I placed the key inside, and then a whisper brushed the back of my neck. "Do not," I froze. The footsteps circled me now, never touching, but close enough to feel the air shift. "I'm giving it back," I whispered. The voice sharpened. "No." My pulse pounded. This was never my pact. I didn't ask for this. The spirit responded with a hiss of metal, keys dragged across the wooden attic floor. Keeper does not choose. I clenched my jaw. Maybe not, but I can refuse. I dropped the key in the box and slammed the lid. The attic exploded with sound. Keys rattled from the rafters. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The tiny footsteps became frantic, enraged, desperate. Something slammed into my back. I stumbled, falling against the floorboards. A whisper shrieked beside my ear. "We keep you! We guard you! We stay!" I forced myself up, gripping the box. "No," I said through trembling breaths. "Not anymore." The air stilled. The footsteps stopped. A single jingle, soft, unsure, echoed from the corner of the attic. A voice, small and trembling. "We be kind, we not hurt, only keep safe." The shift shook me. It didn't sound angry anymore. It sounded afraid. Afraid of losing the home. Afraid of losing me. Afraid of something older than the both of us. Loneliness. I closed my eyes. "Protection isn't possession," I whispered. Silence. Then, "If Key stays, you stay." I swallowed hard. "If I return the key, you let me go?" A long, agonizing pause, and then almost broken. Yes, it was the first and only lie the spirit ever told me. I placed the box back exactly where I found it, and the attic exhaled, as if the house itself loosened after months of holding its breath. The footsteps retreated, the whispers softened. For a moment, I felt something like gratitude in the air, a flicker of farewell. I turned to leave. My hand touched the attic doorknob, and a single whisper slid under the door frame. Keeper. Not a command, a name, a goodbye. I opened the door, stepped through, and pulled it shut behind me. The apartment was silent, still, empty. For the first time in months, I felt truly alone, free, or so I thought. I moved out 2 days later, a new apartment, a new start. I slept through the night without whispers. No keys jingled, no locks resisted. Until last week, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a small wooden box. My breath caught, identical to the one in the attic. I opened it slowly, and inside, resting on velvet cloth, was a key. Not the same one. Older, more warm. And beneath it, a note for the next keeper. As I held the box, the room temperature dropped. In the corner, just barely visible, a shadow no bigger than a child flickered and vanished. Then a whisper drifted through the air. "We found you.